Hello and welcome to today's video. Today we are reviewing an ink by Robert Oster, and that is this ink. This is Melbourne Tram Green. This is an ink that is an exclusive to the Australian retailer, or even more importantly, the Melbourne retailer, Bookbinders Design Australia. So, it's an exclusive to them, made by Robert Oster. Let's check it out. Starting with it here on a colouring card, you see it's a lovely sort of earthy green, but with a bit of a vibrant colour. There's some nice shading, and it's not super sheeny or anything like that. In fact, there's no sheen to be seen on this card, but it looks lovely, and it's sort of got a nice sort of, I suppose, mid-saturation. Here we have it on Tomoe River paper. This is the old 68 GSM Tomoe River paper. I had it in two pens, the TWSBI Goes Extra Fine and Broad. Let's talk about this. So as I said earlier, the 5 points. This is an exclusive to Bookbinders Design Australia. They're a really lovely retailer in the heart of Melbourne. Also have a great online retailing space, and they have created this ink with Robert Oster, Melbourne Tram Green, as an exclusive to their store. Now, Melbourne is the city at the, I suppose, the southeastern major city in Australia, on the mainland of Australia. Has a very historic tram line, which leads to my second point, the colour reference. And the old trams are this very well-known green, and the green trams is kind of like one of the iconic images of Melbourne. Now, my third point here is that Robert does great greens. So, like, just for the sake of the exercise, there's that colouring card again of Melbourne Tram Green. Everything from the beautiful light earthy jade to the almost sort of like bright, vibrant peppermint and sublime, and the lovely ride green lime, darker, broody greens like River of Fire, really earthy Australian greens like Eucalyptus Leaf, and then my personal favourite, the almost turquoisey sort of tealy green of Tranquility. Lots and lots of great green inks from Robert Oster. He does this family very, very well. Blues and greens are really... He's probably one of the best makers of these inks currently working in the world. And the fourth point I have here is it's Australian made. Robert Oster is based in South Australia, and everything is made in-house here in Australia. It's great. The fifth point I've got is value. Now, I tossed up between two things for the fifth point, between value and safety. Robert Oster inks are safe for use in just about any pen. They're non-toxic and all of that kind of stuff, and they have really safe properties, but I went with value because at $22 in a bottle, which I'll come to later on in the review as well, for 50 mils, I actually think it's a really good price. That's Australian. Obviously, I'm only giving the Australian prices today because it is an exclusive to an Australian retailer. You can check it out online. At the moment, I should say, it is an exclusive to an Australian retailer. Who knows what the future may hold? Let's now talk about performance. I said it's a nice mid-green with earthy tones. You can see on the swatch here, there's lots of beautiful sort of earthy green tones, and those darker greens really are highlighted nicely, particularly on this Tomoe River paper where the ink sort of sits on the surface of it. Flow is nice. It's on the wetter side, I would say, which is typical, I suppose, of more modern Robert Oster inks. Mid-saturation, not super saturated, not super light, very nice. Fair performance on lower end paper, as we'll see in a bit. Not like there is bleed, but these are papers not designed for fountain pens. Mid-dry time, so after 20 seconds it was still fairly wet, and you know, in most sort of pens you notice that drying between 15 and 20 seconds. Nice page contrast, very easily legible even in the lighter shading. Some of the lighter shading does get quite light, because it's that sort of like mid-ish saturation, not super heavy saturated ink, but it's still legible, and then super easy to clean. As I said, safe in pens, it doesn't stain. After I wrote this, I cleaned it out of the TWSBI Goes and there was no staining. It washed out super easy. Very nice. Okay, extras here. Good shade. It shades beautifully. Very low sheen, if any. I couldn't see any on any of the writing samples I've done. There's no shimmer and low water resistance. If we look up here, after the water goes down, I dab it up. You can still make out what's written there, but it is very much low water resistance ink, and this is where I've moved it around with a water brush pen, and it moves around in a very sort of light pastel kind of way, as you can see. And from the chromatography down here, you can see there's a sort of this pinky brown line left, yellows and then blues, to create this earthy, nice sort of green, which is so reminiscent of the Melbourne trams. So let's look at it on other paper, and we'll start at the bottom here. We've got, this is the student lecture pad paper, very light paper by Spyrex. It looks a little more washed out here. A lot of inks tend to. Even like if you look at Akamai Shocking Blue, which is a dark, rich blue, this is not unheard of. But there's very little feathering, I would say. It holds fairly nicely. But on the back, there is a little bit of bleed. Not as bad as some other inks, I will say. But there is a little bit of bleed there on that one. If we look at the next rung up the line, which is the 80 GSM copy paper, once again, it's a little bit more washed out. The lines hold fairly tight. I wouldn't say there's too much bleeding going on. Feathering, sorry. And bleeding wise, it's pretty much on par. So you do get a bit of bleeding on lower end paper, but not unheard of on this paper either. Then we have it here on Rhodia. Once again, a nice healthy swatch of it. We don't see a lot of shading in the swatch, which is unusual, but there's shading in the writing, probably where you put down a little bit less ink. Water resistance is completely gone, and everything looks nice. Like the lines are nice and clean and all of that kind of stuff. And on the reverse of that page, nothing has come through on the swatch and nothing in the writing. A little bit of spot in the water test, but it's performed very, very nicely. On good fountain pen friendly paper, or on standard fountain pen friendly paper, this ink will look lovely. Sort of a mid-earthy tone green. So I'm going to take a quick second away from Melbourne Tram Green, which is that one, to talk about another Robert Oster ink that is available. And I'll link to both of these down below at the Bookbinders Design website. And that is Majestic Black. Now, Robert has not released a black up until now. And you can see that's pretty black. This is it on a swatch play card, as you can see. I also have it here on a colouring card, which you can see there. And in terms of colour comparison, like this is that Platinum Chokuro, the blackest black they've produced. We've got Aurora Black, and then my sort of stock standard Platinum Carbon Black. You can see it's not the blackest black on the market, but it does have a nice sort of red copper sheen, and it is the blackest of Robert's inks. I like it a lot. In fact, we'll look at it here on Tomo River paper, and you can see it's a really nice solid black, good copper, coppery sheen. But it looks really nice and it performs beautifully. It's lovely to write with. It feels nice on the page. This ink was released as part of the 7th anniversary series of Robert's inks. So they've been on the market now for 7 years, and this and a couple of other inks were released as part of that. Just for the sake of the exercise, here it is on Rhodia. You see there's a little bit of water resistance. It sort of spreads around a lot and does some weird things, but I think it looks really nice. It's got a nice sort of solid dark color. So on this kind of paper, it is going to look really, really nice, particularly in a wet pen. You're going to get a nice sort of solid black, and I think Majestic Black is a really nice ink from Robert. Okay, time for a color comparison now with Melbourne Tram Green here, and I brought up another Robert Oster, which is Forest Green, which I think is fairly close. But it's a little darker in the lighter shading than Melbourne Tram Green. Melbourne Tram Green just being a little bit more vibrant, perhaps. And just to put that into context, there is Mont Blanc Irish Green, which is a really great standard, beautiful, Irish green. So you can see it's a lot earthier, it's a lot lighter, but it's got some lovely undertones of sort of that richer, earthy green. Okay, so as I said, $22 Australian for a 50ml bottle. This is the bottle, this is the label, Melbourne Tram Green, Bookbinders Design. Really lovely, simple bottle. The only issue with these bottles is that they're quite tall, so once the ink gets low, you do start to find it hard to fill, so you might need to use a syringe, and they are a little bit topply, but they're everything's sort of like environmentally friendly, and all of that is taken into account with Robert. And so $22 for a boutique, still relatively boutique ink maker, one or two people sort of doing the job of a whole team, and produced in Australia, I think it's pretty decent. So I've given this ink 4 out of 5. I almost gave it 4.5 out of 5, but then I was thinking about things like the water resistance and stuff like that. I say it has good performance and a great color. And it's what I refer to as one of these clean inks. It's no shimmer, no high sheen, not super saturated, safe properties, all of that kind of stuff. You can use this in your pens without any concern. That's what I mean by a clean ink. It's safe. It's you can use it in your vintage pens if you want to, or your pens with anodized nibs, things like that. It's a clean ink. It's a lovely, just straight up beautiful green ink, and I really enjoy it. So this was Robert Oster and Bookbinders Design Australia Melbourne Tram Green, and a little look at Robert Oster's Majestic Black. I hope you found this video interesting and useful. If you did, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notifications button if you want to stay up to date with the videos that I produce, and please feel free to get in touch using any of the platforms listed below. You can find me on Instagram or Twitter at @the_offstage_me, or you can contact me on any of my videos here or drop me an email. If you've got products you think I should be looking at, or if there is a way you would like to support my channel, I would love to hear from you. In the meantime, enjoy your inks, enjoy writing, and I'll talk to you soon.